Hello. Of course, we're joined again by my colleagues, Mr. Smiling Bear and Ms. Bunny Rabbit. Now, we're talking about trauma. We're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and how the whole human race from the very beginning. So now you see why doubt is such a trauma and why we try to avoid doubt. We try to be right. We don't want to be wrong because it's painful to be wrong, because it was the original trauma, was doubting God. So now how do we become restored to believing in God again? Well, we are restored when we believe into his faithful Son who represents him. See? And by believing the faithful Son, it's the same as believing back into God again. You see how Christ restores us to the Father. The Last Supper was to undo the food sin, the trauma of eating forbidden food. But now if we eat food in remembrance of him, instead of eating to forget, instead of eating to deny, see, if we now eat to remember him, see how it changes things? All right. And of course, the other thing is we need to be repaired and restored. We're all broken. And in our own personal lives, we need to be restored. How can we do that? Well, by getting back to the inner light, the light from God. So let's go over the ground one more time. The whole human race are creatures of trauma. Began in the Garden of Eden. And those of you who suffer from PTSD, you know that things in the scene affect you. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the people, look-alike objects, people that look like what was in the scene of the trauma, or objects that are like the scene of the trauma, or sounds like the scene of the trauma, they affect you. Well, in the Garden of Eden, there was the woman, and now men are affected by women, and women are affected by failing men. There was the spoken word. Aren't we affected by words? Don't words affect you? What people say affect you very much. Why is that? Okay, and then food was in the Garden of Eden, and food, we all have food problems. Food affects us very much. Food and substances that are like food. So now you see, okay, so we're creatures of trauma. So resolving trauma is important. Not only the little traumas that have happened in your life, or your individual traumas, big and little in your personal life, but also the trauma to which you are born as part of a human race. Okay? So let's talk about it. In fact, that's what Jesus came for, to help us resolve those traumas. Okay? So now what you must see is that struggling with the things of the trauma scene is not helpful. Getting angry, see, and the other thing we fell for, remember the Garden of Eden was a big trauma. The other big trauma, what was the biggest trauma of all? It was not the woman or the food or the spoken word. It was falling away from God. See? Falling away from God. And that's what you do every time you become resentful, every time you become angry, every time you start to doubt. In fact, every time you doubt, it's a trauma. I think it was Paul, or was it James, who said, all that is not of faith is sin. Now do you see why?